Hello there, Sir Fancy here and welcome in a new video where we will look into modeling in Unreal Engine. Yep, inside Unreal Engine, not with Blender or anything else, in Unreal Engine. I think it's pretty clear by now. So first of all, let's make sure that you have a newest version of Unreal Engine, and that's 4.25. So if you have it, just start it and create whatever projects you need. I have created just third-person example map from template and added starter content, so we have some textures to play with. If you are already familiar with Unreal Engine, we have noticed that there is new mode selection, but right now there is nothing about editing mesh. Funny enough, brush editing doesn't mean editing mesh, just saying. For that we need to enable it, so let's go to edit and plugins, open it, and right here, mesh. There are two plugins we need to enable, and that's modeling tools editor mode. Please use with caution. That basically means it will sometimes crash and sometimes it won't work, but usually it actually works much better than I expected. So let's enable it and also enable polygon editing, and the same thing, use with caution. To start now, for that you need of course to start your whole project. Now if you click on modes, there should be modeling. So let's click on it and see what we have here. Completely new selection, so let's get through it. If you have already done 3D modeling in Blender or any other software, you will be probably able to learn this very quickly. But I will take this slowly to explain everything, even for someone who has never modeled before. First of all, there are primitives where you can create any shape you need. Here in shape setting, let's select it to, okay, let's leave it on box. And if you drag it anywhere on the screen, you can see that you are creating new box. The difference from most 3D softwares is that it is already snapping to some planes. That means wherever you put it, there it will have its base, as you can see right now. So let's go through these settings. Width and height is pretty self-explanatory. You just selected how big your objects needs to be, and radius doesn't work in this, but if you change it, for example, for torus, it will show us what we need. With slices, you can see how many it has horizontally. I'm afraid on the edge of the screen. I'm actually really not happy with this kind of setting where it is always snapping to mouse, because like this you can't really see what you are changing on there. Maybe there is a way how to do it, but I don't know about it. But for this, more important is probably subdivision, where you can change, where you can basically make it into donut. Blender Guru approved. The difference from other 3D software is that I think that you cannot use anything else than triangles in Unreal Engine, because Unreal Engine works only with triangles. That means no quads or n-gons. Simply said, every triangle needs to have only 3 verticals, you cannot do more. But let's finally build something to demonstrate other features. You can of course already select materials and UV scale, which may be quite useful, but let me see. Firstly, let's change it to lit and go to content, starter content, and find some materials. And let's say that I want to put there this MTech hex tiles. It's already there, but you can see that it's quite huge and it doesn't really fit. So let's change UV scale. That's better. And put it here. Okay, great. Once you click, it will be done. But if you want to go out of there, you need to click on complete. And you can see game ready model has been added to your game. Modeling 1-on-1. Okay, you can of course use transform or select right here, but to be completely honest, unless you want to delete some specific triangles, I don't think that transform or select is actually useful for you, because you can still use traditional transform from Unreal Engine as you would use with other objects. So let's get to something other, and that's polygon drawing. What it basically does is it will let you draw whatever shape you want on the floor. Let's draw something like that. With polygon tool, make sure that your drawing is connected. It needs to be, absolutely needs to be, and once you connect it, it will let you set up your height just by moving it. You can see that it already applied that material which I did before, so if I don't want to do it, quickly create some weird shape. And let's go here into selection and let's use different material, or okay, that's a really stupid material. Let's go with something like this. Or if you don't want anything, let's just click on it and disable UV scale, and it will have basic material. Okay, just quick thing, if you go into content, you will see that it generated a new folder, and in there will be saved all your meshes. That means that even if you delete it from here, it will be already saved here in content. So let's get to Polypart, which is actually, it's very similar to polygon drawing, but I would argue that Polypart is more useful and more versatile for you. What you can do with it is, again, draw on the floor whatever you need, but you don't need to connect it. You can have whatever shape you want. This may be very useful for drawing dungeons or walls. Overall, I believe that most of these features are most useful for prototyping your levels or just for level designers. I wouldn't really try to make AAA assets in here. Okay, so once you have it, click on it, and then you need to change your camera a little bit. Okay, my bad, you need to click on what you are drawing one more time. And you can see that right now I am changing weight of it, how wide it will be, and if I click once on the left mouse button, I can change also height. Okay, let's go up and click on it again. After that, everything is done and prepared. Okay, now that's basically dungeon already made. Again, you can of course change material or different type of output. Let's actually look at it. That's maybe interesting. Delete this one, and of course deleting just with pressing a delete or anything. And let's click on polygon path and set it to ribbon. Ribbon type, it will let you just draw it in one direction. So you draw it, click on it again, and set its weight, but you can select the high. Not really sure if that's that useful, but that's up to you to judge. Okay, but much more important is probably ramp, where you just draw whatever you need, click on it, select the height, and then when you are selecting height, it will create a ramp as what you would expect from ramp. Okay, let's quickly create another object. For example, sphere type 1 to draw, put it here, and one more here, just to see. Click on complete, and with that I can show you what Vox Merge and Vox Boolean does. You can see that I can't even select Vox Boolean because I don't have two objects selected. What it basically does is to let those two meshes interact with each other. Let me show it to you. For example, let's put this a little bit more in this mesh so we can see that it is intersecting. Click on one mesh, hold shift and click on other mesh and click on Vox Boolean. And first thing it did was to get that first mesh and delete all parts of this mesh, which is basic Boolean operation, quite useful. But what it also did was to voxelize, how do you even say that? Whole mesh, which means that if you look at its wireframe right now, it doesn't really look very nice. But it's something you can actually fix later because Unreal Engine has also remesh options. Okay, click on no, let's not click on accept. Let's change it to lit and again apply Vox Boolean because there is a bit more things you can do. Right now you can see that I have clicked on meshes with different order. I first clicked on this one and secondly on that one, and you can select here which operations you would like to use. Right now it's into A minus B because this one was first. That means it's A, but if I select it to B minus A, it will do quite the opposite. The thing is that I don't want my mesh to be so destroyed. It looks like this. It looks absolutely terrible. I hate it. What I can do is to increase voxel count. Just be very aware when you are doing it, because you don't want to have a lot of high poly objects in your scene. Every time you need to decrease amount of polygons on the screen as much as possible. But right now let's get it high because we are going high. I will show you how you can decrease it even after this. Let's go with 500 with no problemo. If you look at it, the brush wireframe, you can see that it has a lot of polygons that are quite unnecessary. The next thing is to look at Vox Merge, which is basically the same thing but only with one object or as many objects as you need. And let's look at it. There it is. Okay, cancel it one more time. And let's say that I want it to go very low. For example, 32 only. And you can see that it already creates some artifacts or probably deleted meshes. It doesn't really work that well, at least that's how it seems. So let's accept it. And it deleted most of them, so it was only a problem with preview. Okay, that's fine, so let's look into transform. I actually think that most of these things are useless, at least for me. I haven't found too much use for most of this, but there is one thing that's really important and you will probably need to use it as much as possible. And that's editing the pivot point. You usually don't need to work it with modeling, but once you will start animating, it will be very important to set up. Let's say that I want to set up pivot point, which is this object, to the only side of this sphere. I want it only to rotate along one of its sides. It's basically the same animation as you would do with doors or anything else. So let's accept it. And now you can see that I can rotate it around there as I need. And there are for us some reason 2 of them. At least you can see the difference now. That's example that I didn't want to do, but I did. Okay, you can see that with this one, the pivot point is on bottom and center. That means if I rotate it, it's just rotating along its own axis. But right now, when I rotate it, it's rotating along its side. There is one more thing you probably should know about. Once you create it, it already has collision. So if I test it in game, you can see that it is already quite useful. Jesus, I created shape that I didn't really want it, but I am happy with it. Okay, well, you can see that I can already move here as I need. Everything works fine. Ready to use for the game. Okay, that's everything I would like to talk about transform. There are more tools, but I don't find use for most of them. So let's get to deform. First things are sculpt and dynasculpt, but I'm actually not going to talk about that because I will make separate videos for sculpt and dynasculpt, or sculpting in general in Unreal Engine. It has a lot to do with remeshing, etc, etc. So I will look into that later. But first thing we need to look at is plane cut. If you make sure that you always have selected your objects, because it will act with objects you have selected. Let's see. If I have selected this wall and click on planet cut, it's cutting this wall, but that's not what I want. So let's click on this and add here plane cut. So plane cut, as you have seen, basically just cuts your mesh in half however you need. Let's set it like this, for example. Okay, let's accept it. And look at polycut. That's probably more useful and very similar to Boolean feature. And here we go. If you look at it, it is already creating a hole in your mesh. So if you look at operation, is set to cut through, and consider it to cut through and fill. What it will do is to do the same operation, but it will create mesh that it cuts off and save it as separate mesh, I believe, or separate polygroup, one of these things. But I want to cut it through. You can of course change its shape. Right now it's on circle, and let's say I want to use rectangle or round react, whatever you need. But let's stay with circle, because you can change with here how wide you want to have it, etc, etc. Or subdivisions, of course. You can basically make a cube out of it with circle. I know it's surprising, but you can. Okay, but probably much more useful for you is this action draw polygon. What it will let you do is to draw your own shape that you want to do. So let's say that I want to draw this weird shape I have just made up. Let's say it's some sign. Let's say that it's sign of friendship in my culture. Ta-da! Okay, and you need to put it where is your mesh. It's true, I haven't been really smart. I should have been drawing in that pivot, but at least you are smarter now. Let's rotate it, and let's say that I want to do it on the side, right here, and it's cutting it here. Okay, let's get to another one, and that would be smooth. You can use it if you want. I actually don't think I would ever use smooth in any 3D application, but if you think so, you can use it. And the next thing will be, of course, displays, which as well I am not usually using, but I believe that you can find some useful for it if you are creating some abstract shape or anything like that and want to add some randomness to it. You just need to let it work, and let's actually decrease subdivision because our object is already high enough. And you can use random nose noise, random noise, Berlin noise, any kind of noise, or your own displacement map, which is something you will probably use. Let's put here brick, and doesn't look really good, to be honest. Okay, let's just cancel it and go to space deform. And with space deform you have different operations which you can set. Right now it's to bend. That will help you bend your object. If you need to, you can select it with this tool or set it to twist. That, again, if you are creating abstract objects, this is quite useful. Okay, let's accept it, because why not? It looks cool. And there is a remesh tool, but again, I will talk about that in a sculpting video, so we will get into that later. You can work with polygroups. So that basically let you do is to differentiate your mesh into a lot of separate polygroups or vertex groups. It depends on what you are using. Right now you can see that there is actually a lot of the groups that were probably created with merging those objects, but I'm not going to play with it right now. I don't usually work with polygroups, to be completely honest. So let's get to juicy part you were waiting for, triangles, because you can work only with triangles. So let's select that mesh and again ignore transform and select and click on 3edit, and it will be probably better to use different objects. Let's actually play with this cube. Select 3edit. And now you can select whatever triangle you want. You can move with it however you need, rotate it, etc, etc. And there is of course traditional operations that you can see right here in triangles edit. You can extrude it all, confirming it by clicking, create offset, make it bigger, then use R to switch to transform mode, which you can still use here, which means scale mode of course. Scale it down. Then let's use inset for whatever reason. Scale it down. Oh, I have used too much inset. Now I have a disk here. I can vote or whatever. I have basically created voting box. Cool. If you want to select more triangles, you need to hold shift, of course. Let's say that I want to extrude only this. Let's extrude them. Once you finish with it, you need to click on accept. If you don't do it, let's see, did it. Let's create some really weird shape. And you discover, hey, that looks actually really ugly, I don't want it, just click on cancel. I didn't want to show you any of the remeshing stuff, but one only thing I can actually quickly show you is to simplifying it. If you have too high poly mesh, and which is something you will run with sculpting thing much more into, let's look into brush. Oh, actually I don't need to. Let's go into lit and click on simplify. It shows you all the vertices and you can select how much you want it to decrease. It's set to percentage, so right now it's set to decrease by 50%. Let's get it to 100. That's how it was. And now let's go to 10. And you can see that it created just what we asked it to do. Okay, accept, save it, and you can walk on it. Now you can create some ramp that you can walk on with really low poly stuff. The last thing is to work with UVs. With all these edits we have of course pretty messed up all UVs, especially with vox merging and anything vox related, to be honest. So what we can do with it is to see how it looks. First of all, let's put some texture on it, starter content, materials, and cobblestone. And you can see it's really not good. That's not how it should be. Okay, there is auto unwrap feature which sometimes sort of works, not really. Oh, okay, it works right now. That's how it looks when it is working. And you can see that it created sort of UV textures, but there usually are problems with scaling, etc, etc, etc. But you can use it if you want, especially for the non-uniform objects such as this. But that's not what I want. I would recommend you to use UV projection, especially for something like that. Oh, it won't really work with it, but I can still demonstrate how it should look like. Okay, you can see that it's still huge. So what I will do is to scale it. Let's say 5 times 5 UV scaling, and you can see that it looks much better. Yeah, it still looks terrible, but it's better. Let's change it to bricks, and you probably get the idea why UV scaling is so important. Okay, accept it. Of course, we need to select bricks again. That's everything. That's how you create a ramp. I don't know. Okay, hopefully you have learned something from this. Let me know in the comments if you think these modeling features will be useful for you. As I said, I think it can be very useful for prototyping levels and for level designers in general, but I don't think I will leave Blender, definitely not for this. So let me know what you think about it. Join the Discord, you know, all the funny stuff. See you around. Surfancy out.